Hello, and welcome to How to Startup. I am your host. I'm also Ronan Sinclair, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Jordan Turner from 77 Threads. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
Hey, I'm very well. How's it going?
It is going. It is going. After after technical difficulties, it is going again. I think this might be round three. Um,
Yeah,
haven't been knocked out yet, which is good. Still standing. But I'm
plenty of
not
rounds to go.
there. A couple of rounds to go. Couple of rounds to go. As long as this isn't an MMA bout and I get wrestled to the floor and put into some God forbidden chokehold, then we should be okay. But yeah, how are you, man? How's things? Sorry about this nightmare of a start.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Eager to get going. Technical difficulties happen all the time. I'm used to them in my in my day to day, so it's fine, honestly.
Okay, appreciate that. And your day to day is Capgemini. You are an account manager, right?
Yeah. So I've been there for 4.5 years. I joined straight from school on their apprenticeship program, actually. So did a full-time job alongside a degree, a university degree, which I completed the full program earlier this year. So it's been a good 4.5 years, alongside obviously various other bits and pieces, which we'll get into the detail of during the next hour or so.
Indeed. And so how did that work? So you were taken on as an apprentice for Capgemini straight out of school. So whilst you were at university, you were doing that as a full-time job.
Yeah, so Capgemini offer a really good apprenticeship program. There's a few different programs they do now. Over the last 4 years, they've kind of evolved, but predominantly it's an IT consultancy company. You can go down either a technical route or a business functional route, but essentially you join straight from school. They partner with Aston University, which is based up in Birmingham, and the idea is you work full time in your day-to-day role, whether that's technical, business, and then alongside you do a corresponding degree. So mine was in leadership and business management as I progressed through a sales role and a business role within the company, fully funded. The course is designed bespokely designed by the university and the company, so that the content's very up to date, very current in terms of the trends within the IT space, within business space, and it's about a 4-year program, and you come out of that with a BSc. In my case, from a business perspective, you become a chartered manager. So I'm now a chartered manager through the CMI, Chartered Manager Institute. And the best thing is no debt as well, which is a good bonus in today's society. So yeah, it was a fantastic choice that I chose when I was leaving school. Really, really pleased that I took that route. And yeah, it's been a good, interesting 4.5 years in Capgemini and doing the degree at the same time. Challenging, but rewarding.
Challenging because obviously you started 77 Threads on alongside it, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. So, 3/4 of the way in through the program, I started with an idea of 77 Threads, and was doing that on the side. And then upon completion of, or near completion of the program, I decided to take it up a step and turn 77 Threads into a proper business.
So I asked you before, but obviously we weren't able to record it, that we're not worried that starting 77 Threads whilst you're at university and doing a full-time job wasn't going to threaten either of those in any kind of detrimental fashion.
Yeah, I think is a good point. I think for me in particular, the 77 Threads idea at the time was my safe space, my happy space that I could go relax, be creative, be myself without having to worry about it. At the time, it was an idea, it wasn't a business. So it was a time where I could go and relax outside of work, outside of study, and just enjoy myself really. At the time it was designing stuff, being creative, turning it into product that I would wear. Ultimately, the idea of 77 Threads came from creating clothes that I would wear. And over time, it's grown into something where I can now share my ideas and my designs with other people.
And were there not any other clothes that you wanted to wear?
Yes, I think I identified a gap which I believe was in the market. There's brands that I love, but I think the issue that I found earlier on, and the issue which I believe we resolve still to this date, is you either have to make a compromise, one of either way, within specifically within in streetwear in particular, and fast fashion, that kind of area of fashion, is you either have to compromise price or quality. In my opinion, you can't, but you couldn't get something in between, and that was where I was struggling with finding clothes that were of a good quality but were at an affordable price. It was either one or the other. If you wanted quality clothes, they came at a price, which is fair enough. But for, people like me, for the everyday person, you don't want to spend 60, 70, 80 quid on a hoodie. You don't want to spend 50, 60 pounds on a t-shirt. And the companies out there that do offer t-shirts at lower price points, the quality, you don't get the quality with those. You get something that is, in my opinion, cheaply made, something that isn't bound to last long. And personally, I don't think clothes, something we wear every day. It's an area which you can express yourself through fashion, through what you wear. You want to feel comfortable in what you wear, and you want something that's going to last. But you don't want to pay. You shouldn't have to pay a large sum to be able to express yourself in that way. And that's the gap that I believed that I could look to solve, and hence why 77 Threads was created. And there was a lot of effort, there was a lot of time, sweat, tears, money that went into it, into making sure that we got it right. I didn't want to, like I said, just create a brand, create some cheap tees, stick a branding on it and sell it. That isn't what it was about. It was about creating something that was quality made, but represented a culture, but also that something that people could relate to and people could afford. That was the main thing. Get working, studying, through that kind of route. Like a lot of people, you don't have 50, 60 quid, 80, 90 quid to go and chuck away on a t-shirt or a hoodie, but you want to express yourself. You want to wear something quality. You want to wear something that represents you as an individual. So that's really where the idea came from, and that's where the brand and where we fit in the market, because fashion in particular is so saturated and so overcrowded, specifically in the cool streetwear kind of space, that kind of street style, young fashion brands are popping up. Every day there's a new brand that is popping up, and it's so easy to do so nowadays with Instagram, with print on demand services. It's really, really easy to be able to create a logo, stick it on a t-shirt and sell it. And so it was important that we didn't just become one of those brands, and we did it properly. We created a brand properly that actually meant something and wasn't just a logo on a t-shirt at the end of the day.
So why did you think that you personally could create a brand that could fit into this target market? Obviously, you were 19 at the time.
Yeah. I think about
in 2017. That. If it was 2016,
yes,
you went, unless you had some kind of mad gap year prior to 2016. I did. But yeah, if you were 19, what made you think at the time that you were the person to be able to create that kind of brand and identity for people to be able to express themselves in the clothes that you were making for them?
I think I've always had a passion for streetwear and the kind of market which I started with. I've always enjoyed. I've always been in that kind of sneaker community. I've always enjoyed buying new pairs of trainers. Buying limited trainers, whether that's through Yeezy and the whole Kanye West thing that happened a few years ago and how big that is now, whether that's through Supreme, which is obviously a massive streetwear brand, and how that's risen over the last few years. So that scene and that culture is something I've always been into, and something that I've always been passionate about. And so and also I think in terms of my age, being able to relate to a lot of younger people, a lot of at the time where you've got Instagram, which is growing tremendously, and you social media in particular, and you see a lot of people on social media trying to start brands. Like I said, how easy it is to do now. Growing up in that space and that sphere, being involved in that from an age of 19, I understood what people wanted. I feel from a social media perspective, I've understood how it works, not just posting and getting likes and that kind of stuff, but how to create stories that compel and are interesting to an audience. And that's something that we've always tried to do with all collections, is create a story. So I think that from a young millennial Gen Z kind of perspective, it's important to for me, I fitted into that narrative really, really well. So being able to, like I said, creating clothes that I would wear was the number one starting point for me. Creating something that I would enjoy to wear and to represent, and then naturally other people in the community that I was in and the space I was in, it could grow that way.
So let's talk about the logo then, or the name, 77 Threads. Obviously, from what I've understood and read so far, 7 was quite an important number to you. Obviously, it's linked to spirituality and mysticism, as well as obviously you played number 7 in ice hockey. Cristiano Ronaldo, he's my favourite as well. He's everyone's favourite. He's just next level, isn't he? And then obviously you came up with the idea in July 2017 as well. Now, from what I've read from other brands, a lot of them have a story around them, like Jocal or Jucal, can't pronounce it properly. And what's the other one? No Stress. I think No Stress is more like a mantra. Did you ever think that there needed to be a story around yours?
It's something that I guess is played a part in the branding and the thinking behind it when first setting it up. I think ultimately it always came down to creating something that would appeal, was minimal, but there was a subtle meaning behind it. I didn't want something that was in your face. It was something that was, because I think that potentially can limit you as well. I think that the branding is so important to get right, to not only to limit you, but not only to not limit you, but also be defined enough that people would know who you are and recognize you. And I feel that's why, to start with, we started with the 77 logo, which is a number 77. It's got quite a kind of street kind of style design. And you see it on some of our products today. That was initially our main logo. But what I over time, as I matured and grew up, and wanted to create clothes that didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves in a specific area. That's why I think it must have been 2018, 2019, the logo changed to be the word 77 Threads, Helvetica font, plain, simple. And at the time, a lot of big brands were doing this. Burberry updated their logo to plain, simple text, because that way you're not pigeonholing yourself in a specific area, and it allows you to be, I guess, a bit more creative rather than being that typical street style company that makes the vintage tees or the one design t-shirt, stuff like that. Since then we've been able to do check flannel shirts, and we're always looking to grow into different different product streams as well. We've got a couple of conversations going on at the moment about other areas we can develop, not just from a t-shirt and a hoodie perspective. So I think from a story perspective, it's important to still have that subtle hint of identification and an identity. And I think from our website, our stories we tell through the products, we create those stories, but we didn't want to limit it to being very, very specific about this is what we stand for. It was something that could mold and adapt over time, because as the brand grows up, we're only a couple of years old from an idea perspective, and the company was only founded in 2019. In 2-3 years time, we might be completely different in the sense of what we do, what we sell, and the kind of stuff we create. So, but having that.
Sorry to interrupt. Does it not concern you not having a specific vision as to where the company is going in that regard?
I don't think so. Specifically in fashion, I think fashion trends change so much. It would be wrong to stick with a core kind of vision. I think we have a vision in the sense that we know what we want to do in terms of we want to create quality stuff which is affordable. That will always be the case. In terms of the products and what we create, that will evolve over time as we grow as a business. We can create more stuff, new stuff. But ultimately it's about creating clothes that is like I said, quality from a product perspective and affordable. And over time, as we create new stuff and bring in new audience members, the customers we have today who are, a lot of the stuff all the stuff we create is unisex. It's predominantly at ages, our target market is from ages of 16 to 30 is kind of that kind of range. But people at the lower end of that range are going to be very different to who they are in a few years time. We don't want to lose them customers. We want to keep them as part of the journey, as part of the brand, but we don't want to limit ourselves to just those people. So we need to adapt as our customers are adapting, but also we want to be able to have a story or have a brand that can bring in new community as the community grows from all ages, both men and women, and to be able to adapt and relate. And I think that's important, to be able to, like I said, have a subtle meaning, have a subtle vision, and create clothes that change with trends. The good thing about fashion is, trends come and go. You'll see something that is in fashion this year, and then next year it won't be. But 3-4 years down the line, it will be back in trends in trend again. So I think that's you have to have that level within fashion to be able to be flexible and to be able to adapt, but also having that core inner belief and vision, like you said. And for me, it's trying to keep that subtle, but not losing it at the same time.
So when you started, obviously I'd like to delve in later when you obviously ramped up from a passion project into a business. But when you initially started, how did you go about it? Obviously you had your idea, you went about your design. Did you come up with the design first?
So the designs came first, the products came first. At the beginning, it was just t-shirts and hoodies mainly. It was a couple of t-shirts, a couple of hoodies, and it was messing around with some designs, working out what looked good. And then once I got to the bottom of what looked good, it was then, okay, how do I get this onto a t-shirt, and how do I get this onto a hoodie? At the time, I had no idea how it worked whatsoever. So there was a lot of research involved, a lot of YouTube videos, Google, that kind of stuff. So it was starting off trying to find out how you do it. And at the time, like you said, it was a side hobby, something I enjoyed doing. So didn't want to invest too much money up front at this point in time. So looked at screen printers in the local area who could help me turn these designs from an idea into a product. Managed to find a screen printer who lived worked very locally to where I was living at the time. So I reached out to them. they had a massive catalogue, a book which is probably like this thick, and I've still got that book actually. It's in the front room of every single blank that they sell. For those of you who don't know about how blanks work, there's hundreds of companies out there which create blank hoodies, blank tees, blank any particular piece of clothing you can imagine, unbranded. A lot of them are unbranded. A lot of them have terrible tags, so they can be branded upon, of all different variations of quality. So he showed me this, and I went through that, a couple of days, circling ones that I like the look of, circling ones that had a good variation of colours.
Just quickly, Jordan, in terms of the quality as well, did you have an idea in your mind in terms of the quality you wanted to go for?
At this moment in time, no. That was something that came at a later date. At the moment, I think there was always an underlying ambition of creating something that was of a reasonable quality. At this moment in time, I was naive to know what quality money would get you. So it was very much when I decided it wanted to become more of an actual business, there was a lot of trial and error at that point of trying to get the right quality. But at the early stages, it was more getting the designs on a hoodie, on a t-shirt, and seeing what they look like.
So for anyone out there who's looking to start their own streetwear brand, they don't need to be concerned about quality initially. It's just get the design right and make sure you find a decent manufacturer to be able to provide you with blanks so you can actually put your design on them.
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, first and foremost, if you're creating a fashion brand, it should be because you have a creative interest in doing so. And that's what it is in for me. I love and I enjoy creating stuff. The fact I can sell it and hopefully share that with other people is a bonus. But at the beginning, like you said, it was a creative passion of mine. So at the time, quality was not the number one priority.
Okay. And so just back to obviously the story you were telling us, you were circling all the blanks in the exhaustive Bible that the manufacturer had.
Yeah. So I went through circling ones that I potentially like the look of, got together a short list, narrowed the short list down, then went back to the print guy and said, I really like these hoodies. I really like these t-shirts. This is my design. Make it happen. And a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call, or I think it was a week later, I get a phone call. Your stuff's ready. I go there, pick it up. I remember walking out the shop actually to the car. Before I got in the car, got out the bag, got the t-shirt out, and it had all my design on it, and it was brilliant. At the time, the idea actually came about with I was working with somebody else, or the idea came about with somebody else who helped me with the designs. It was a friend at the time, but I remember taking some photos, sending it to him, and it was brilliant. And I think it was the first being able to see something that was in my head actually on a product, and getting home, rushing home, putting on the t-shirt, and yeah, for me that was a big deal.
And how did that feel?
Great. It was like I said, being able to see something that I think from any creative can tell you, taking something from in here to something you can physically hold will always be, even to this day when we're working on new collections and new samples, and we'll design something. I'm currently in a process of waiting for a brand new collection that's currently being sampled, and I'm eagerly waiting for the samples to arrive. But I know when they do, it will be the same feeling now as it was on that first day of opening them, seeing them, and feeling them, and putting them on, and just knowing that is something that I've created. And even when you just, because when you're sampling new collections, it's an iterative process. There will always be stuff that it doesn't quite work. It might work in your head, it might work on paper, but when it arrives, you just don't feel it, and it's difficult to explain what that is. But when you, as a creative, if something's not right. And there's been times where we've got samples, and I've been really, really excited, and the design is fantastic on paper, and loads of people like it. And then when it gets to you, you're just like, I don't know, kind of thing. There's been hundreds of products that
it's because
I've designed.
you don't personally want to wear it.
Yeah, exactly. There's been hundreds of products that I've designed, sampled, and when they've came in, you know, I I don't have that same feeling, and I haven't made it online or haven't made it to store. It's interesting. It's interesting, that feeling. It's difficult to explain. Only you know when you get that feeling that something appears, whether it's quality, whether it's the way the prints turned out, the stitching, if it's embroidery, or the fit of the actual garment itself. There's lots of different things that play into it, but you kind of know when it's something good.
That's it. It's like going into a fitting room and seeing something that you've picked out, and you're like,
Exactly.
actually, you know what? This looks so good on the rack, but now, yeah, my belly's hanging out, or why are my nipples sticking out of this? It's all these things that
Exactly.
you probably don't have the issue of yet, man. I mean, you wait till you get to 30. Um, so obviously you had to test the market, and you had your first print. How many items did you print first and foremost? And what were they? Were they t-shirts? Did you say?
There was, I think there was a hoodie, a sweater, and about 3 t-shirts was the first batch.
Okay. So how did you establish that there was a potential market for them?
So at this moment in time, so those in particular designs, the very first batch of those 6 or 5 never actually got released. It was a good trial period. I wore them, and people liked them. I remember wearing
So you've
them
still got them?
around. Yes, yeah, upstairs.
Hold on to them. Once you get big, mate, they'll be limited edition shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the quality, they're completely different to the kind of stuff we sell now. But you're right. To me, they've got that extra sentimental value, and I would wear them around, and people would like them. I'd wear them to hockey training, and show them off to team members and stuff like that, and they'd really like them, and that kind of stuff. I think that's that over time it became, oh, this is people actually like this kind of stuff. Before it was just something I would do at home and no one would see it, and now all of a sudden people are seeing the stuff and are liking them. And I mean, there was a couple of people were then like, oh, where did you get it? Or, oh, how can I get one, kind of thing, especially from like friends and family who are always very encouraging, that kind of stuff. And I think that's where the idea kind of first started, of thinking about taking it to the next level. But then it was kind of back to square one, and it was, okay, if I'm actually going to do this properly, it has to be properly. And therefore it was, and again, at the time it was around the same time where myself was buying clothes from, big name companies, that weren't satisfying my needs, or having to spend, like I said, a lot of money on clothes that I wasn't prepared to pay that kind of money for an everyday hoodie kind of thing. So I think the two together came at a good time for me to decide, actually, that there's this gap that's been bugging me for a while. People like this stuff. Let's plug that gap. And that's where it was back to the drawing board, and decided, right, if we're going to do it, we need to do it properly. At the time as well, from a degree perspective, doing a degree in business was very helpful, because when I first started this business, I did it at school, but no one really, you can't, unless you, and I'm sure you know this, before you actually set foot in a business or a startup, and you get involved in it, you can't, it's not something you can teach. You can teach the academic fundamentals of running a business, but you can't run a business until you've tried to do it. So I think over time, as I learned more from a degree perspective, got a bit more understanding of, finances and products and marketing, which is obviously a massive deal within fashion due to how oversaturated it is. It all kind of came together to the point where I felt confident enough to be able to do it properly.
Right. So obviously you'd had the opportunity to wear your brand and do your own version of market research by allowing your own friends and other people of similar ages to see the clothes that you're wearing, obviously 77 threads on your brand, and essentially be able to find out that way whether they would identify with your target market, which is quite smart. How did you end up going about scaling up? How did you know how much to scale up by? And then obviously your first round of distribution, I guess.
Yeah, so the first thing was from a product perspective. At this point, we knew that quality had to be one of the main priorities here. So it was almost going back to square one in terms of trying to find a supplier who could match our expectations. The printer, the supplier that I used initially was just naturally, I think, too small and didn't serve the priorities that I wanted to serve. His whole thing was around creating leavers hoodies for universities, creating stag and hen do t-shirts, that kind of merchandisey kind of based product,
Gimmicky almost.
not yeah, which is fine, but for what I wanted to create, it was not the right fit. So we again went back to square one, and I found ended up finding a new supplier who again, we went for a whole range of sampling and got a really good built a really good relationship with him, which we still use today, and we've got a good process of designing the stuff and him then producing and getting the samples. So it was first stage was finding that new supplier, building that relationship with the supplier, because ultimately, as a supplier, he has hundreds of brands that he looks after, and it was important to get that good relationship with them, because you want them to feel passionate about making your stuff as well. You're not just another brand on the conveyor belt who puts designs on products, makes them, and sends them. So
I'm expecting your supplier to be fully kitted out in 77 threads.
Absolutely. I'd like to hope so. I'm gonna have to give him a ring after. So it was that was obviously first very important. Then it was about building the brand online. So, scaling up on social media, which is predominantly our main outlet of marketing and main outlet of sales, is through Instagram, Facebook, and then using ads on top of those, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and all that kind of stuff, which is what we do a fair bit more now, more than before. So it was building that kind of hype around the brand initially.
Did you have a particular launch plan?
No, actually, we didn't. It was more of come up with a new concise set of samples, keeping it very low different designs to start with. At the time when I knew I wanted to take this to the next level, for me, having inspiration and mentors was, if anything, is extremely important. It's something that I'm passionate about anyway. So using my network of friends and family and colleagues and people I know to find people within the industry and within the space who could help me was one of the first things I did as well. So I managed to, through a friend, a very close friend, get in contact with a guy who has been in the streetwear space for 20 plus years. So I reached out to him, sat down with him, spoke about the business, the brand, the products, got his opinion. He's seen brands come and go in this space like mine. He knows exactly what works, what doesn't work. So it was very important to get his view and his opinion on it, get his advice, which helped massively. And to this day, still go to him for advice on anything and everything. So that was a very important part for me, is getting that kind of validation and that I was going in the right direction.
With regards to obviously finding your mentor, obviously you've reached out into your local network to identify the best one, or at least you were put in touch with someone who'd been in the streetwear industry for 20 years. Did you meet any other mentors that you had identified as great, but not quite fitting for your current situation?
I think I personally would never rule out anybody in terms of being a mentor. I think everyone's got something to give, whether it's good or bad. There's some that I keep in contact more so than others. So, one of the initially a mentor I had, or someone who was very a go-to person at the beginning. There was a vice president at Selfridges who I actually reached out to over LinkedIn. Didn't know him through my connections at all, with the intention initially to speak about just ask him some ideas about the kind of brands and the kind of products he sees come in and out through Selfridges. Selfridges is ultimately where, from my perspective, any fashion person wants to be at some point. To be able to walk in Selfridges and see our brand on their shelves would be a dream. So why not reach out to someone in that space to find out how to do that? So I reached out to this particular guy just with some questions, really. Met up over a coffee, asked some questions, built a relationship. Now, obviously, his experience in the luxury space and in Selfridges is very, very different to where we are at the moment. So, that's not to say over time that mentor relationship will get closer. But he's always got something good to offer. There's another mentor that I've only started recently getting in. I've only recently been introduced to, who's got, he's a consultant in the retail industry. He's got, 20, 25 plus years in the industry, helping from big brands to small brands with their merchandising, planning, marketing. Again, through my network. All of them have something different to offer, and all of them have their own opinions, which can be, when one's saying one thing and one's saying the other, it's difficult who to listen to when they're also experienced. But that's something, I guess, a risk you need to do what you feel is best for your brand at that moment in time. But all of them have something to offer. So I use the mentorship relationship in the best way possible, given what they can add and advise to me and the business.
Superb. And with regards to anyone that's actually looking out to find a mentor, did you ever have to give anything in order to receive advice, or was it just a relationship building escapade?
It was mainly showing enthusiasm. I think the main thing with these people is that they're all very busy. They all have very busy lives and jobs. And if I want to take half an hour of their time out of their day to buy them a coffee, to ask them questions, you need to be enthusiastic about what you do, and you need to show that in your initial reach out. So you're kind of selling yourself as a person. Not forget about the brand at the time being, but you need to sell yourself to them so they want to spend half an hour out their day to spend time with you. The more senior they are, the more requests like this they probably get. So it's about standing out. So whether that's sending something for free and saying, hey, I'd love to get your feedback on this, here's one for free, it'd be great to get your input or ideas. From a mentor perspective, I haven't sent anything for free. I've taken stuff with me and that kind of stuff. And from a mentor perspective as well, if they like the stuff, and I found this, if you meet up with them and they like the stuff, they understand business. They don't want free stuff. They're happy to buy from you, and contribute to the business. I think the most important thing is selling yourself as a person as to why they want to invest in you, because as a mentor, you're not just investing in a brand, you're investing in that person and helping them as a person grow their brand. And also it's something that they feel that they can put their name on as well, like specifically more, like I said, more senior people, big jobs and a big influence within the industry or within the space. They don't want to just put their name associated with anything. So you need to make sure that your brand has that kind of level of can hold Yeah, exactly. And it's not something, it's not a joke. It's not something, fun. It's something that, that they can get behind if they feel that passion for it.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of I think you might have watched it, but my interview with Baron, that 17-year-old CEO, and
Yeah.
he had to get the Pointer CEO and COO on board as mentors. He sent them a
He pitched
10-page
himself,
white
didn't he?
paper. No,
Yeah.
that was I don't know if he pitched himself. I think that was a comparison I was making to Jordan
Yeah.
Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street, which is hilarious. But yeah, he sent them a 10-page white paper offering to solve certain issues within the augmented reality community, and he was only 14, 15 at the time.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Crazy.
Yeah, really ridiculous. But that's the kind of things you have to do. I suppose when you're that young, to demonstrate that you can be taken seriously. But obviously, as long as you can conduct yourself with some kind of authority, and perhaps you've got a university degree, and obviously a name like Capgemini behind you definitely does help. But it does make a huge difference. Knowing your stuff and knowing when to reach out and knowing how to approach them with some form of respect and with some certain element of passion behind your product. And as you just said, to provide it with sufficient, to make sure that it has sufficient gravitas. So just moving on to marketing, I guess. So we have spoken about you scaling up. Obviously, you're still using that supplier today. How did you decide on your distribution channels from there?
So it was, firstly, it was always going to be online based to start with. It was going to be e-commerce, buy through the store. That was the easiest way as a startup. The power of the internet is to be able to put something online and reach millions and millions of people. Being within the growth of social media, being involved in that. Given my age, I knew that social media was going to be one of the biggest aspects of selling as well. So, predominantly through Instagram, we grew is where we predominantly grow our brand and therefore sell through Instagram as well. We've actually now, over the last couple of weeks or so, we've now added all the extra Instagram functionality that they're constantly adding, where you can actually add products, you can tag products to post, so they can buy directly through the app now without having to go and type in and Google your name and all that kind of stuff. So taking advantage of all the extra social media stuff like that is working and is proven to be good. And then I guess the main comparison was online versus bricks and mortar. That's always a thought you have to think of when you're going into retail or going into fashion. Given the way retail and high street is at the moment, for me, it was always very important to establish a strong online presence before we start having any conversations about opening up or going down the high street route.
Have you gone down the high street route now?
No, we haven't yet. We've had a couple of conversations. We had one of the furthest conversation we had was last year, actually through one of my mentors who was in discussions around his own store, his own streetwear store on the high street, and there was a lot of discussion around that. For various different reasons, unfortunately, it didn't happen. That's not to say it won't in the future. And we've started a few conversations again through email outreach, all that kind of good stuff, with some small niche London-based streetwear or small-based independent clothing brand stores. Albeit it's very early conversation. So it's not something that I've ruled out. It is something I have always been interested in. The dynamics are very different when you're dealing business to business rather than business to consumer. So there's a lot of extra things you have to take into consideration through stock, through pricing, through margins. Logistics, so much extra. You'd have to set up a different part of the business just to run that whole operation. So it's not something that we've done yet, but it's definitely not something that we've ruled out. And at the moment, the way, especially with it's interesting given where we are with COVID as well and how that's affected retail and in particular the high street. Whether that will change our plans, perhaps.
You talk about, sorry to interject quickly, you talked about obviously B2B being an entirely different model, but obviously you've got huge online retail stores like ASOS and others. Have you decided to go down those routes at all? Or is that something that, again, is down the B2B pipeline?
I think ASOS is, I think, probably a good in between where we are B2C, B to consumer, B2B online, and then B2B high street. ASOS is, that good in between, because it's that building those B2B relationships, but doing it in the safe space of doing it online. Again, it comes down to like the operations and how them as a business holds stock. There's actually been a couple of conversations in the past with online retailers like ASOS, albeit a lot smaller, who have been starting up. They wanted to start a ASOS competitor and wanted to get exclusive brands online like ours. We've turned them down for a number of different reasons, but I think ASOS as an example is a good in between, and in order to make that jump to B2B selling would definitely be a consideration before we look to jump to the straight onto the high street.
No, for sure, because essentially you've already built that online brand presence, and ASOS itself, you'll be able to translate it a lot more easily rather than straight into store. People who generally buy from bricks and mortars 77 Threads won't be instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
So in terms of obviously building a brand in the first place, you talk about social media. Were there any particular tips or tricks that you can pass on that you've been using in order to build your brand, communicate to your customer, ensure that you build your brand recognition to the maximum that it can be?
Yeah, sure. So I think from a marketing perspective, there's one learning, which I think has been interesting from my perspective, and that is this whole new world of influencer marketing, and what the word influencer marketing actually means. Luckily, I have a girlfriend who is very much involved in that whole world, more so than I am, and she actually helps run the business with me now as well. So she is offering advice, support, help, and specifically around marketing as well. She understands that whole space much better than I do. I've been when I first started, my initial thinking was lots of followers, therefore they're going to sell my product for it very well. And I soon learned that was not the case at all. Followers does not equal audience or community.
No, it just equates to high amounts of dopamine.
Exactly. And part of my naivety at the time meant that I was sending stuff out to these big people and not getting anything in return. I'd get posts, no sales.
It's the social proofing tool more than anything these days. It's the same with Facebook likes, Instagram follows, Twitter follows. It's the same thing. Even the amount of likes you get on your post doesn't indicate that it's actually got that much brand recognition, because you can pay for that shit.
Yeah. So what we've done, so from an influencer marketing perspective, and something that I found extremely useful, is really being quite selective about who you work with. So we, rather than sending something out to anyone and everyone who's, been on a reality show or is part of, an MTV program or something like that, which, are going to have lots of followers and stuff like that, finding someone who maybe is within your community, within your space, understands your brand, understands what you're trying to do, not necessarily the biggest in the world, but can either do one of three things. That is, one, equate to sales through their audience if they've got a strong audience. Two, which is very strong in my understanding, is content. If they can create you content, and a guy that we work very closely with, a guy called Stefan, who shout out Stefan. He's got not the largest following, but his feed is amazing. The content he creates with his photographer is fantastic. Some of our photos from our website are from his photo shoots, and you have an expectation that they're not necessarily going to make you the best or make you a lot of sales off the back of their posts, but you know they're going to create you bloody good content. So I don't mind working with him and working with people like that because of the I don't necessarily get sales in return, but I get good content that I know I could reuse. So that's key. So someone like that, I think, even though traditionally influencer means you've got, in today's society, influencer means you've got a lot of followers, but that isn't what influence marketing is. It's about the influence you have on a community, and albeit his community small, he has an awful lot of influence because of the rich content he creates. So I think it's just understanding that, and I think that's been massive for us in terms of creating stories, creating content from an influencer lens.
So what was the process that you undertook in order to find influencers in the first place?
So it's scouring social media. It's scouring people who are popping off.
Then finding the ones that you resonate most with, and then you probably do hashtag searches and then just DM them.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, being part of the streetwear community, you get to know the people who are popular, the people who are posting that kind of stuff. Then off the back of them, you can find people who are. If I was to go to, from a streetwear perspective, there's a massive YouTuber who always gets the latest Supreme and Off-White and all that kind of stuff. I can go to his page, and whilst I might not necessarily send stuff to him, but I can go to his most recent Instagram post and look through some comments of people who are in the same community as we are, who are trying to do what he is doing and growing their page and growing their following and all that kind of stuff. This whole micro influencer kind of term, which is used a lot nowadays, and they're the kind of people through comments we can find. We get a lot of people come to us as well.
Sorry to interrupt again, mate. Micro influencers, are they essentially influencers within a niche? Was that how you would describe them?
So micro influencers are people who are not necessarily. So they can either be in a niche, or they can be people who are not fully established as a household name, but they're not your everyday person, if that makes sense. They have a following. They are building a community. They are building an influence, and you can see that. You can start to see the influence they're having, whether that's between 10 to 20 odd thousand followers. They get gifted a few stuff here and there, rather than your massive 100k plus followers, millions of followers, those kind of guys. It's like that tier down.
Okay. And sorry, just back to what you were saying. I interrupted you midstream.
It's fine. So so it's finding those kind of guys is important from a marketing perspective. Like I said, my girlfriend helps vet and validate everyone we send stuff out to. Otherwise I would send stuff out to everyone and anyone. So having that level-headed side as well is always very beneficial. So I think that's a good.
I can cut this bit out if you want, mate. If you don't want her to see it.
No, it's fine. Honestly. So I think that's a good tip I would give. Just being sensible around that, but also not being afraid to jump onto bandwagons that are growing. The last couple of weeks we've since lockdown, actually lockdown has done a tremendous thing for social media, and in particular it's done a tremendous thing for TikTok. Now I don't know if you're on it, however it's grown to a complete another level. Now I was looking at their stats actually the other day for the amount of downloads they've got in such a short space of time, and it's like surpassing Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely crazy. So on there's a lot of new people who are starting to emerge as micro influencers because they're early to the platform. They're starting to get that following. So we sent an item out to a guy who's starting to build his following on TikTok. His videos get over 1 million views per video. And it's crazy, and the way the platform and the algorithms work on there at the moment means it's very natural compared to the likes of Instagram and Snapchat and stuff
very
like that.
Natural. In what sense?
In the sense that it's the way Instagram works is Instagram, YouTube, stuff like this, they force products, they force pages and profiles onto you that they believe you might like. So the way Instagram algorithms work is, there's holes you can fall under if you're abusing hashtags and all that kind of stuff.
It's all comes down to their own targeted advertising algorithms, of course.
From a TikTok perspective, their algorithm is very natural, where you could make a video that has 60 views, and then you upload another video and you could get 1 million views, and then the third video after that can be back to 60 views. It all comes down to the content and what you're creating, not you as a person. Now, obviously, over time, as the platform gets bigger, that initial phase will naturally wear out, because that's the way that people are established. People the influencers will rise to the top, and you'll have this fear of influencers.
Do you feel, however, though, that TikTok hasn't got as much longevity as, say, the other social media platforms? I ask that simply because they're all short form videos. There's not a huge amount of value that can genuinely be gained from them, except for attention span stealing. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Vine.
Absolutely. It is Vine at the end of the day. And yeah, for the Vine, obviously, went down not long after it launched.
Yeah.
I think it was only up for a few years.
I think it was post Twitter acquisition, wasn't it?
Yeah. But it will. I think the biggest thing with TikTok is it will establish a new wave of influencers. It already has. I'm big into the whole YouTube space and that kind of thing, and there's a whole bunch of YouTubers that I follow that started on Vine, but are now very, very influential on YouTube and as social media personalities. And you're already seeing the same with TikTok and TikTok stars who are now earning, 15, 16-year-olds who are earning millions of money. And even when TikTok dies, you know that they are going to be the next generation's reality stars and influencers and people
without
like that.
Without a doubt. I don't think that was my argument. My argument was more in terms
from
of
a platform perspective.
Yeah, from a platform perspective, is it worth investing in it? Because I'm not sure. Well, I suppose maybe in the short term it is, but in essence, if you are a brand starting out now, and is it worth going in straight away when there's a possibility that it's going to die out maybe in the next couple of years?
I think the good thing from a marketing perspective is you have to be able to be you have to be adaptable and flexible. Ultimately, from a marketing perspective, my ambition and goal from a marketing perspective is to get my product out to as many people as possible. Now, if that means sending a product to a person who is on TikTok, and I know that he's going to get 1 million views on that particular video, and he tags the product or whatever, and I've reached 100 or I've reached 1 million people in the short term, then that's a tick in the box for me. If TikTok dies as a platform and I've built a relationship with a individual and he's now growing his platform he's branched out from TikTok and onto different platforms, and I've already built that relationship with him, that's a win-win. And I think, again, that comes down to the whole micro influencers. If you build relationships with people who aren't yet established, when they are established, it's not going to be forced. But the thing I hate is when you can see it all the time. You go on Instagram and you see these people, and you know that they've either paid to post that or they've been sent it for free, and it's just, everything's the same. One day they'll post a photo of a hoodie with the most generic text ever. Next day they'll post another hoodie with the most generic text ever, and you know how it's gone down. They've charged 60 quid for a post, and there's no personal feeling with that, and that's what I don't like. Whereas with micro influencers or people, if you can start to build that relationship early, Stefan's a fantastic example, and he'll appreciate that. I've probably given like 100 shout outs.
You're giving 2 plugs now, mate.
Yeah. I know. But, his profile is growing, and I would like to hope that I've built a relationship with him, and more importantly, he's built a relationship with our brand, that when he is bigger, that, he still represents the brand on his own merit without feeling like we have to send him something. And, if you can adapt to new platforms like TikTok and start to build a relationship with influencers who, yes, TikTok, if it dies, if it doesn't last, at least you've got something out of it in the short term and built some relationships in the long term as well. But in terms of a platform, you're right. I can't see where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going to go.
No, you can use all the sevens you want, mate, but you're never going to be that mystical, mate, to be able to foresee the future. Now, Jordan, I think you, out of all the guests I've had so far, probably know what time it is now, because it's been about an hour. And usually at this point, I ask my guests to do two things for me. The first is a 10 to 15 second elevator pitch. So, Jordan, would you mind pitching us 77 threads in 10 to 15 seconds? Most likely it won't be 10 to 15 seconds because it never is. But 3, 2, 1, give it a go.
Sure. So today you've either had to compromise quality or price for a good high-level premium products of clothing, especially in the streetwear space. Until now, 77 Threads is a brand for the mass of people. It creates affordable clothes that is built on trends that you see established in the fashion industry and trends of today. And it takes it to the next level by creating really quality products at the most affordable prices ever.
All right. Smashed it, mate. And numero 2, if you wouldn't mind taking your phone, taking a selfie, me in the background, making some obscene expression, that'd be fantastic. I don't know. I'm starting to think that I might need to stop doing this part because it's really annoying for people listening to the podcast. But
hang on, let me get a bit closer and touch the screen. Oh. There you go. There's a couple there.
Nice. Yeah, fantastic, mate. It was amazing speaking to you. Thank you so much for that.
And G,
it was great. It was great. There's a huge amount of gold there, and it's been it's been revelatory because obviously the first fashion brand I've been able to speak to, and I've personally learned quite a lot in terms of obviously having to build a brand from scratch. And I honestly, I would never have thought personally that to where your product would probably be the best form of initial marketing to identify your target market. And that was fucking genius, mate, for lack of better terminology to describe it by. It's really smart. Is there anything else you'd like to leave my one or two listeners out there with? That's 1 or 2, including yourself, by the way.
No, thank you for inviting me on. It's been great. I've enjoyed it. I've been going on about it to friends and family all week about being on it. It's been good to have the opportunity to finally talk about the brands, share my story, and hopefully it will encourage people to start something if they're on the cusp of not sure if to do it or not, but also to go and check out the brand and if they're into that kind of thing and check out our story and give us a follow.
And where do we need to go to check you out, man?
So you can go to our website, which is www.77threads.co.uk, and over on Facebook, you find us at 77threads, Instagram at 77threads_, and Twitter at 77threads. Pretty standard.
It's 77 numerically, so you don't even have to spell it out.
Absolutely.
That's what he's done for you guys. Jordan, again, thank you so much for jumping on. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. And remember to tune back in next time for some real-time advice.